I'm really pleased to be here. I'm a New Yorker by birth, live in exile right outside Washington, D.C. I have some remarks prepared, but before I get into them, I wanted to say a few things. I was talking with someone a little while ago today, and they were basically talking about the difficulties of the moment that we happen to be in. And I think I shocked them when I said, I have never been as excited and as enthused as I am now, at least not since maybe 1970. Right? And I am excited by a number of things that I think should excite all of us. So first of all, there's this Arab democratic revolt that has been unfolding that nobody expected. Anyone that said that they expected are lying to you. Right? Double, triple underlined. Nobody expected this. They may have expected it in the sense of Keynes said that in the final analysis we're all dead, right? So in the final analysis, we knew that there would be an Arab revolt in the final analysis sometime this century. But nobody expected it right now. And what's remarkable is it's very indigenous. I mean, you can't say that external forces were driving it. You can't say it's religious driven. The phenomena that took place in Egypt, and I know this goes way beyond what I was supposed to talk about tonight, but I got the front of the room. What happened in Egypt at the religious level was, for me, amazing. When you had Coptic Christians saying to the Muslim community, we will guard you during prayer so that Mubarak's henchmen cannot attack you. I mean, this is something that was absolutely amazing. So we've seen these victories. Obviously, there's bloodshed, as we're witnessing right now in Libya, which is very, very unsettling. But this has the potential for reshaping global politics. Now, some people may think that that's melodramatic, but it has the potential of reshaping global politics in the same way that 1848, 1917 through 1919, and 1945 through 1970 reshaped global politics. But the outcome is not inevitable. And that's the thing that we have to keep in mind, that there's no assurance that there will be victory, because just as in 1848, at first it appeared that victory was on the horizon, there always is the possibility of a setback. There is always a possibility, as we saw in the Philippines in 1986, that elite forces could take control of a movement. And it really argues for why there's a desperate need for both clear left organization and a broad front. Without organization, things can just unravel, and the people that have the organization, for example, the military, are ideally positioned to move right in. We saw this in Ethiopia in 1974. It was not that Haile Selassie was overthrown by the military. The military preempted a movement that was already moving forward to get rid of Selassie, but they had the organization. So I'm very excited about this. I was excited watching the contaminating effect of the Arab Democratic Revolt in Wisconsin, right? And now Ohio and Indiana, where people who only a few weeks ago were probably wallowing in despair, assuming that defeat was inevitable, all of a sudden do these remarkable things. So I think that there's incredible reasons for optimism and excitement at this moment, but we have to be sober about it, because victory is not inevitable. And if we look at what's happening in the United States, what's interesting, we have Wisconsin, we have Puerto Rico. So almost no one is talking about Puerto Rico, right? I mean, very little attention to what's going on in terms of the crackdown at the university, the resistance that's been going on in Puerto Rico for quite some time. There's very little attention there. We are getting appropriately attention in Wisconsin. We've got to devote more attention and support to the movement in Puerto Rico. And we've got to understand, however, that all of these movements, and I want to focus just specifically on Wisconsin, have to go beyond a defensive battle. And this will be my final point before I get into my remarks. I tend to think in military metaphors, and one of the challenges of the moment is to think of ourselves not in February 2011, but February 1942. And if you think about February 1942, 2 months after Pearl Harbor, the Germans were racing through North Africa. No one was stopping them. Rommel had it going on. Island after island was collapsing in the Pacific. The Philippines had not yet fallen. The Germans were only stopped outside of the gates of Moscow because they miscalculated the weather, because they got stuck in the Balkans earlier in 41. And they were regrouping to prepare to move on this little town called Stalingrad. And there was no basis for optimism. None. You had to have been a fool to have been optimistic in February 1942. But what was important was not simply that there were defensive battles that were being fought, but that there was a theory of a counteroffensive that was being developed. Not simply to defeat the Germans and the Japanese in terms of their attack, but to fundamentally defeat them. In the Union movement, we need to develop the theory of the counteroffensive. We need to have a strategy that's not simply about resisting these attacks, as we're seeing in Wisconsin, but just as the governor of South Carolina recently said that she wants to break the back of the Union movement, ours must be a campaign to break the back of the other side. Not simply to call it a draw, but to break the back of the other side. It's a completely different way of thinking about what our tasks are, and it really involves rethinking allies and strategy, so that when we're facing these attacks in the public sector, what do we have to do? Well, among other things, we have to reframe it, not in terms of simply we're losing our jobs, and not simply in terms of the right of collective bargaining, as important as that is. We have to be perceived as the guardians of the public space, not the other side. When that happens, that's all right, you can applaud. I don't mind being interrupted. When that happens, we'll win. And until that happens, we will remain on the defensive. And even if we're able to block these idiots on the right from their various shenanigans, we won't be able to break their back. We break their back when we become known and understood and felt to be the guardians of the public space, the guardians of the public sphere. And that's what I don't see yet happening. But we have the opportunity right now. So that's a little bit of departing from my original remarks. But thank you.